building end of it, but the planning end of it. I don't know how many people have ever gone in to get a permit. It's not fun. It's punitive. And because of that, it's expensive, time-consuming, and it's frustrating. A lot of guys just won't do it. They just, I got ground, I don't want to deal with it, and they try to sell it. And because of the other thing that was stated, the low amount of ground right now, there's so much ground tied up in farm, forest, wetlands, many other things, and it's a supply and demand issue. Prices are high, and I get that, because the land's scarce. And, you know, if you've got ground you want to sell it, hey, more power to you. But unless there's more land available, that's a built-in cost. Something this outside of this ordinance that's coming down the pike is a FEMA rule with National Marine Fisheries that makes this look like a cakewalk. So this may be moot at that point. But in the meantime, hopefully some questions come out, we can get into some facts and figures on some actual numbers. So, thanks.
My name's Adam Schwend. I'm one of the owners of Coast Real Estate Professionals and the president of the Tillamook County Board of Realtors. I'm proud to be part of a real loosely organized but still diverse coalition of builders, of realtors, of contractors, of small business owners. And we're a very diverse group and a very diverse, and a lot of diverse thought. There's members of our coalition who think a construction excise tax, if partnered with a whole bunch of other stuff, and system development charge reductions, density bonus work, all kinds of things like that, could work. There's members who don't think a construction excise tax will ever work. We've got members who think a housing coordinator is a really important thing to have, but maybe just disagree with how this is funded. We've got folks who think a housing coordinator is just another government bureaucrat. We've got a mix of folks, but there's two things that we really agree on. And interestingly enough, it's two things that the city of Bend, who the commissioners have pointed to as a success story, got right. One is the city of Bend did not use any of their construction excise tax originally to hire their housing coordinator. Their housing coordinator existed before they put in a construction excise tax. So they used none of that original construction excise tax funds to actually fund their housing coordinator. It all went to workforce housing. The other thing is how it went down. The city of Bend had a whole lot of folks who were objecting to their construction excise tax when they were put in. When it was put in. Realtors, builders, contractors, small business owners. Sounds familiar, right? What they did was they brought everybody into a room and said, okay, folks, let's hammer out an idea. Let's hammer out a plan. Let's hammer out something that's going to work for our community. It took them a while. It took them some time. But at the end of the day, they came out with a program that worked for them. It worked for their community, and they could own it. That's not what we saw here. Certainly we had the Housing Task Force, but the Housing Task Force never discussed this. We had a situation where the only real public input was at the public hearings, which were, if not 100%, really close to 100% opposed. And I'd like to say one last thing. Item 2 on Ordinance 83. I'm very disappointed that this was put out as objective. That I, representing the Board of Realtors, promised I would not institute an initiative petition. We'd already initiated it. And what I told Commissioner Yamamoto was, I'm 1 vote of 68. I'll bring it and see what happens. I'm disappointed that that shows up in there. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to shift gears a little. So as you heard in the presentation that Adam and I gave to start the evening, there's data and agreement that we have a housing crisis for our workforce. I'm sure that most of you know someone or have heard of someone who came here for a job and was unable to find housing. We agree there's a crisis. The difference of opinion, as Adam pointed out, and so did Lowton, is whether or not this 1% construction excise tax is the right tool to fix what is broken. I want you to understand that yes, this is the right tool to start with. The 1% tax alone is not going to generate enough revenue to solve the problem. I understand that, totally don't disagree with that, but it is a vital first step. Early on my job, I met with a nonprofit housing developer, someone whose job it is to build this sort of housing in communities. And he looked at me and he said, it's never going to happen in Tillamook County until you guys have some skin in the game. When you have some financial backing, when you have some human capacity to chase after the state, the federal, the private dollars that are very hard to come by, then you can be successful doing this. So that's what that 1% tax is about. It's about getting us some capacity to begin the process that many other areas have been successful with for years. So the housing crisis is not just in Tillamook County. We know that. It's all across the state. The legislature realized that, and they looked and said, we have to take some steps. So they passed Senate Bill 1533. It has in it more tools than the construction excise tax. They're not tools that are appropriate to our area. The construction excise tax specifically is for counties and non-metro cities because they recognize we have a different situation. We have to have a different tool. So right now we have this tool available to us. Let's talk about how it can work. It can provide the local funding that allows us to leverage additional funding from outside. Adam mentioned Bend. For every $1 in local money they have leveraged 7 to 10 outside dollars to come in and help them build this housing. That's the sort of thing that we need to be able to do. This tool is appropriate because it targets those folks who are able to build housing and do large remodels. It's folks that are part of growing that real estate to an expense level that workforce housing can't be done by the free market. This is 1% on those projects. It's something that can be enough of a tool to move us forward. And it will really be paid largely by folks who are not living in Tillamook County. So the legislature made this tax available specifically for communities like ours to use. We're the first county to pass it. The state is looking at us for leadership. They want to work with us. Let's keep this momentum alive, pass this ballot measure, and begin to work on these vital steps to address our housing crisis.
First of all, I want to thank AAUW for putting this on. I really appreciate it. The one thing that I think people need to be aware of and understand is that 95% of the people in this county are not going to pay this. What's going on?
Closer.
Okay.
Get closer. You gotta eat.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you. So 95% of the people in this county are not going to pay this tax. Quite frankly, it's set up to be hitting some of the beach properties and some of the upper income on the commercial properties. And when you look at that, really, folks, if you're building a house, are you going to let 1% stop you from building a new house? Really? I mean, if that's it, as your CPA, I would say, doggone, you better not build that house because you're going to be broke if 1% is going to do that. If you're in the construction of a new commercial building, it's the same thing. If you can't get a 4 or 5% rate of return or more, you shouldn't be building it. So 1% is not going to stop you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 1533B. I don't know who all in here is a member of the Oregon Association of Realtors, and who in here, and how many are members of the Oregon Home Builders Association. But here's their testimony on Senate Bill 1533. We urge you to vote aye on Senate Bill 1533. The bill represents a significant step to address the housing needs of the Tillamook communities, or Oregon communities face, through a balanced approach that combines policy tools and resources for housing. This is a negotiated solution that meets the needs of developers, cities, counties, and the residents of Oregon. Senate Bill 1533B will increase the supply of safe, stable, and affordable housing in communities across Oregon. Folks, this is your organization at a state level. These are the people you pay to lobby for you, saying this is a good thing. They helped develop this bill. They helped build this bill. They gave us a bill that we could just sign into law without doing anything, without public hearing. Well, we had to do the public hearings, but without input, because this is the law that your boards put together for us. Now, as far as final point on this, we are the only municipality in the state of Oregon that has adopted the CET and then put it through initiative petition and put it on the ballot. Other realtors and contractors in the other municipalities that have adopted this fee, and know they are in crisis have supported it because they support workforce housing in the community. They support the needs of the community. They work in partnership with the government and the community. They don't go run off and forget that one. But by doing this referral, we've fallen from leading Oregon. We're seen as one of the leaders in Oregon on housing in rural communities. We're falling back in the pack. That's going to hurt us, folks. It just means that I have no grant money coming available. We're getting farther in the pack for grant money.
Okay, thank you all very much. So we've got 1 hour, and I've got a whole stack of cards, and I'm only going to be able to go through 12 or 13 because it's going to take us 5 minutes per, but I'll do what I can. So I'm going to start with Lowton, and he'll get 1 minute, and then they'll each get 1 minute. My second set of questions will start with Adam and go around. So, starting with Lowton. Tourism promotion, can you hear me okay? Tourism promotion is raising land values exponentially. Why does the county promote tourism so much if there's no affordable housing?
It's, you know,
And you don't have
I
to
really
take
don't know how to
That's a good
answer
question.
that.
Yeah, you pass if you.
I'll pass, I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't think, and Bill, you can probably speak to this better, I don't think anybody expected it to blow up like it did. I think we promoted it, and I think the amount of the receipts that came in via the transient lodging tax so exceeded expectations, showing that we just weren't prepared for this level of tourism. So I think Nan Devlin just did too good of a job.
I'm gonna pass.
I agree with Adam on this. When we passed the tourism tax, we didn't anticipate getting over $3 million a year in tourism-related funds. We have tried to work to put more into infrastructure and less into tourism, and we did manage to get it from almost 70% going into advertising down to, our goal is 50%. But $1 million a year in advertising does open up a floodgate. It's good for the businesses, except now they don't have employees. We're seeing businesses in Manzanita close because they don't have employees and a place to live. Even my hairdresser yesterday, when I went in to get my hair cut, she said it spent her 7 months before she could find housing in Tillamook. She had to live with her parents. She also noted that her sister works at the hospital and can't find housing. She told me that the hairdresser can't hire people because there's no place for them to live in Tillamook. So it's a problem. I don't know how much of this has been caused by the tourism tax and promotion. I think we were just on the verge of discovery anyway, and I think we're seeing that all up and down the coast.
Okay, what's the plan to fund workforce housing if the 1% fee fails? Adam?
I think there are a multitude of ideas. I think a lot of them haven't been able to be vetted because we didn't have the opportunity to do so. It's my hope that if the 1% fails, that the Board of Commissioners, the home builders are going to do what I had wished we had done to begin with, is all sit down in a room and hammer out all of the details, put everybody's ideas on the table. Let nothing be off the table. Let's do something comprehensive. A first step is good, but if the first step just raises the cost, you need to partner that with something. The city of Newport found a way to impose that construction excise tax by changing how they do system development charges. Instead of just one block, they do it by the square footage. They found a way to actually lower some system development charges, or lower the cost of development in half by some places. These are the sort of things we need to consider. Everything has to be on the table.
I agree. I think everything should be on the table. I think our challenge in Tillamook County is that we do not have someone who can come bring this together and make this work comprehensive and cohesive. Those of us on the Housing Task Force are all doing full-time jobs elsewhere. This is not something that we have the time or the expertise to bring into the room. The other thing is there's a huge amount of expertise that we don't have and that doesn't exist in our community that is vital in building this workforce and affordable housing. This is not something new that no one's ever tried before, that we have to create a great, big, brand-new plan. Yeah, we want to include whatever local resources we can, but let's bring in someone who really understands how to do this, to lead the charge, someone who understands the state, the federal, and the private monies that are available out there to partner with these other ideas and opportunities that Adam wants to bring to the table. We need someone to lead that charge, and we need someone with the expertise and the background to do so.
So one of the reasons that the state approved Senate Bill 1533 is because they realize in the rural counties, we don't have any funding. We're broke. It would have, the general fund, we're laying people off, we're not hiring new people. The funding is not there, and it's that way throughout the state of Oregon and the rural counties. This is the one opportunity they've given us for lifting ourselves out of it. This is the one opportunity for Tillamook to get some skin in the game and actually make housing available in Tillamook County. Once we passed Ordinance 83, we had the state come in and they met with me. And now I'm talking about LCDC, the planning, the housing, everybody on the state level met in one office, and we talked about what we could do. Now that they wanted to work with our housing coordinator, and they've offered grant funding to look at all the planning and zoning laws in the cities and the counties to line them up. They've also said that they would be willing to look at some of the state laws and maybe give us some exemptions. But that wouldn't happen without a housing coordinator. They want that, to see that in our community. We need that.
Okay, let's talk funding a little bit on this 1%. I ran the numbers. I looked at all the permits in 2016, commercial and residential. If 1%, if the demarcation is $100,000 and above, this raises $216,436. It's not $300,000, and that's the 1% at the $100,000 level. When you bump it to $250,000 level, you raise $78,000. Now, I don't know how many housing coordinators you can hire that have all the expertise that we're saying that we need for $78,000. And that's not including your benefits and all that stuff. So, you know, if you think that this tax is going to be only on people building a $250,000 home or more, you're crazy. It has to be lower, it has to be over everything, or you don't raise enough money to do anything. And that's what I'm saying right now. They willy-nilly threw a $100,000 exemption, and then they willy-nilly threw a $250,000 exemption to buy off the realtors. It doesn't pencil, folks.
Okay, thank you. So the next question starts with Aaron. I own my own home and have no plans on building. How will this really affect me?
It won't in a negative way. It could affect you in a very positive way. We're able to get the workforce housing built that we need. It can really change how our economy is functioning. So you're not going to pay the tax if you own your home unless you're going to do a remodel that meets that $250,000 line. It's not going to negatively impact you. Workforce housing here in our community will positively impact all of our businesses, everyone's ability to grow. We have an economy right now that is starting to stall out. We are seeing businesses close their doors so that because they cannot find the staff they need. Second restaurant up in Manzanita closed down this last week because they could not find the staffing they need. That's negatively impacting us. Let's get the workforce housing we need so that we can keep our economy going forward.
I would concur with that statement. You know, we're hearing from the school districts that they haven't got housing for their teachers. We've heard it from the creamery. They gave us $50,000 for this study to do it, to start working on workforce housing. How long before the creamery starts outsourcing its jobs from Tillamook County? If there's no place to live, no place for their employees to live, how long before we start losing very good paying jobs in our community? We're in the same boat with the hospital. The hospital gave us $5,000 for our study. They're in the same boat, folks. We're losing our nurses. We don't have places for them to live. Some of them are commuting from Portland to come to Tillamook and work. And Slotin's numbers are not right. I can tell you that. He's taking a $100,000 exemption on everything. The $100,000 exemption was only on remodels, not on everything. And the $250,000 exemption is just that. If your house goes over $250,000, then the entire thing becomes taxable. So, in effect, we will raise the $200,000 to $250,000.
Again, now we go back to the ordinance itself. This is such an unclear ordinance. So I went down to the building department and asked them, how is this applied? And I applied this, my numbers have been applied, how the building department said it would be. So, if you build a house that's $249,000, then you don't get taxed.
Right.
If you build one at $251,000, you just paid $2,500 in tax. That doesn't sound equitable to me. You know, this is what Bill's saying now. This is the first I've heard this. Okay, that's what this was told to me at the building department was the first $100,000 of any project goes off. And there's nothing in here that says it's just remodels. It was new construction, residential and commercial, $100,000. The new ordinance with the adjustments was $250,000. That's a two-tier system. And we'll get into this a little bit on who pays the actual tax on building a new house.
My answer is I don't know. The ordinance is 2 pages long. There are no rules attached. We have no idea what it's going to do. People say, well, it's going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We have absolutely no clue. We have not seen the rules. The rules could have been written and presented alongside the ordinance so we knew what we were getting into. One of the giant reasons I have concerns about this is, I think Logan said very clearly, it's vague. We do not know what is in this ordinance because we have not seen the rules. In this, the community development director is directed to write the rules. We currently have an interim community development director. So if the rules are already written, they're being kept private. If they aren't already written, someone yet to be determined is going to write them. And so, to answer your question, I don't know, and that scares the living daylights out of me.
Thank you. Okay, Bill, we'll start with you. Why not take some of the tourism money for the housing coordinator?
The excess tourism money.
We love that.
I tried. I went to Salem and I had a bill in front of me that Adam opposed. You told me when I came up with that bill, that's the most stupid idea ever. So I did, and I got it shoved down my throat in Salem, basically, because you're up against Orla, and Orla is a big organization that has a lot of power, and they pretty much killed it before I had a chance to get it done. It makes sense, and we're going to try again. And the next time, I do have a little more backing to help me on it. I have some of the larger housing organizations have been willing to step up and help me on this. So we'll keep trying. I doubt very much whether it's going to happen. The reality is you're up against a very strong, powerful lobby.
Commissioner, could you just say, what is Orla? It's a lobby. What does that mean?
That's the lobby for the tourist industry, for the motels and hotels and the Oregon restaurant.
Okay, thank you. Logan?
Back to the funding on this, who pays the actual tax? Having built a number of custom homes for people that pay good money to build custom homes, when they go to build a custom home, they want X, Y, and Z in their house. And if you give them a price that's too high, they say, well, you better come back and sharpen your pencil. So what does a builder do? He sharpens his pencil and he takes it in the profit end, he takes it out of it. So when he comes back with that 1% tax, they say, you better sharpen your pencil, young man. And so we sharpen our pencil and we don't create quite as much money. Who are those builders? Those are your neighbors in this community. They're the people that hire other people in this community. These are the guys that are out in the weather and the wind and the rain, and they're going to be the ones paying this tax. If you think someone other than somebody in this county is going to pay the tax, yes, you can.
They create good paying jobs too.
I got to say, Commissioner, I think you may have confused me with Justin. Thanks.
That could very well be, Adam.
I supported that bill, and Justin and I actually had many very interesting beer-fueled conversations about that.
Then
So
I apologize profusely, Adam, because in my mind, I thought it was you.
No,
I
starting
understand.
your time over.
that is
Yeah.
an incredible
I am.
alibi for the future. Thank you.
You do know what age I am.
What was the
Your
question?
time's up. And it was, why not take some of the tourism money for the housing coordinator?
Oh, yes, and I concur with Commissioner Bartline. I think the bill that he presented, I was there when he presented it, was a good one. He did run up against Orla's opposition. I hope that we can come to the table with that again, because I do think the amount of funds that are being, I think the amount of tourism dollars that are coming in, tourism is booming, and it's a wonderful thing, but it is causing part of this issue. And I'm sure afterwards Justin will beat the ever living hell out of me for saying that.
Karen?
So, yeah, I think we've all agreed that unfortunately the way the tourism bill's written, we are not able currently to use that. I will say I had an opportunity to do some facilitation around the community around the tourism related dollars, and there's agreement from all of our friends and neighbors that we would love it if we could use those resources. So we look forward to presenting that bill again in the coming session and hope that we can get something moving there. What I will say is we have an opportunity to start something now. We don't have to wait. If we wait until the next session for a tourism bill and say that's when we're going to start taking actions, we're going to make something happen later, we fall further and further behind. We need workforce housing now. We will need it in 20 years, but we need it now. We need to get started, and we don't want to lose the momentum with the state. The Governor's Task Force on Housing is who we met with. They were down here, and they are excited to work with us and to see what opportunities we can do to be a pilot for rural communities. If we say, oh, we're going to hang our hat on the tourism dollars out there next session, we lose the opportunity to get started, and we lose the support of that vital group as the leader.
Thank you. Lowton, who defines workforce housing?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I will say that there's a vast range of workforce housing, well, not studies, but ranges. I mean, the workforce that the hospital needs, their workforce is paid differently than the workforce housing that Pelican Pub needs, than the workforce that Hampton Lumber needs, that the workforce that the Tillamook County Criminal Station needs. You have such a wide range of housing needs. So what's the common denominator? There's workforce housing across all demographics that is short. So why is that? There's not enough ground. We go back to the planning and zoning in Tillamook County and in Oregon in the last 50 years. That is strangling development. Now, there's a whole other question about, do you want more development or less development? Higher density, lower density? That's a conversation we should be having, and that can be done with the commissioners and the department with the state, period.
Logan is right, and I think it was discussed that we really need housing across the entire spectrum. So I think we use the term workforce housing to differentiate from affordable housing, which generally has a low-income connotation to it. A couple of things I do want to address. I'm disconcerted that the only way that the state is willing to help us is if we hire somebody else. That blackmail, and that really bothers me. So anyway, so there is that. My business partner right now is building a new home. It's going to cost, according to valuation, about $260,000. She has already paid $17,000 in system development charges. $2,600 may sound like not that much, but it's a substantial percentage increase. She is not building a McMansion. She's building a home so she can get out of her rental and let someone else use it.
So there's our stuck market, perfect example of our stuck market. So workforce housing definitely is across all segments of our community, and we definitely found that with the housing study. This Senate bill specifically defines affordable housing, and it gives us something that we use, which is 80% of family median income. That is $42,640 a year for a family of 4. That is 2 people working at minimum wage full time, and on that income, they can afford $1,066 a month for rent. That is at that lower end of what that workforce housing piece looks like. So the Senate bill gave us affordable housing. It is defined in there. I think affordable housing has a bad sense, as Adam said, it's that low income housing and people are concerned and scared. We're not talking about scary housing. We are talking about people who are working in our economy and need to be able to have housing they can afford, and not kill the rest of their budget.
And I agree, workforce housing is spread across all sectors. And that's what we did in this ordinance. We put it at 200% of the county average for the amount on the commercial side. The state allowed us to do that. So on the commercial side, we are looking at the housing for the creamery and the housing for the hospital. You're looking at $100,000 in wages at the 200% level, roughly. So we are working on that end of it. So this isn't just about low-income housing. We're trying to move the needle at all areas. How would that work? Well, possibly we could have Mr. Daniels build a combination of low-income housing and medium-income housing with this money. I mean, it's a possibility. We could pay the hookup fees with the money. We could do a lot of the incentive work with the money. But the bottom line is, we got a crisis all across the county on housing in the state and the nation. We're facing some tough times and tough choices. We're not going to be getting federal help anymore, and so we're going to have to do a lot of this ourselves.
Okay, this next question is addressed to Adam, but I'm going to let everybody have a chance to answer it if they want to, and Adam's the next one out anyway. The city of Tillamook, of which you are a city councilor, has a community development fee of 1.1% on all projects over $20,000. This is higher than the 1% CET with absolutely no exceptions. Will you work to abolish this tax as hard as you've worked to oppose the county 1% fee?
Certainly willing to. My belief is, and it says really clearly, I think, in our housing study, we need to lower the cost of development. We have to lower the cost of development. And if working to reduce that 1.1%, I'm willing to give it my darndest. It isn't so easy to just waltz in and eliminate it, but I am willing to do my darndest to either replace that income for the city, or find another way to balance our budget. I think the end of the day is, it is just too expensive to develop. And yes, we need a first step. We do need that first step, but I think just taking this one thing and being our first step, we can do a larger first step. Let's work together. If we're going to have that construction excise tax, we have to have something like that. If we decide we have to have something like that, let's pair it with a way to reduce our system development charges. They are killing us.
Aaron, would you like to respond to that question?
Well,
Are you going to work that hard?
I certainly can't change that, and I'm not a city councilor, nor can I be. But I think one of the pieces is we have an opportunity to start today. Let's start today. That doesn't mean we can't go back and look at those system development charges. It doesn't mean we can't work on a comprehensive plan. That can still happen. It doesn't have to be a this or a that, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to start soon. If we don't take decisive action and begin moving forward, we're not going to get there. So I would love to work hard with Adam to figure out what else can be done, but let's start with this piece. The state has given us this tool to use. Let's accept the tool we're given, and let's use it to its best use by getting somebody who can coordinate a process in our community to lower those system development charges, to make it more affordable, and to gather those outside funds that we need to also make it affordable. Let's go ahead, let's work together and work hard.
I've learned a long time ago, don't meddle in city politics.
Yeah, I think that'd be great if the city got rid of that fee. I think it's ask Roby's what they thought of that fee, because they got 0 for it and they paid it through the nose. I'm a tool guy. I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of different tools. Just because I own a tool doesn't mean I use that tool. You know, this project may not require this certain tool. I got a lot of bandsaws, but I don't use a bandsaw on every job. You know, I mean, just because I have it, there are times when something like that is necessary. Just because you're given a tool doesn't mean you have to use it. If it's a dull tool, it's not worth getting out of the box.
This one starts with Aaron. Multi-use is not exempt in ordinance 83. is this not contradictory to accomplishing recommendation number 3 in the housing study?
So multi-use is not
Multi-use.
exempted, so I assume that means housing over the top of a business or multi, do you mean, something about multifamily or multi-use? Those mean different things to
Yeah.
me. Multi-use, as I would hear it, would mean you could have a business downstairs and housing upstairs, and that would not be exempted. Is that
I
correct?
didn't.
Okay. So if we go forward with that,
Sorry.
assuming that multi-use is not exempt, and is that not contradictory? I don't think that it is contradictory. I think that it was set at a threshold of 250, and if your building project is going to cross that, then it fits within there.
30.5.
You're going to generate revenue utilizing this multi-use if you've got a business on the downstairs, so it doesn't seem to make sense that it would be exempted, but perhaps I am misunderstanding their question.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that question either. Multi-use building can be most anything. And if it's producing low-income housing on top and regular housing down below, or a business down below, I don't see why it would be exempted out of it. There's a lot of rules and regulations that, as you build these ordinances, you work through some of these things. We have a task force set up, or will be setting up a housing commission to help work through all of these little bits and pieces. We put the basics together. We really need this housing advocate. I can tell you, I've had calls in the office asking me for help in building complexes here. One's a 72-unit thing, the other one is a 45-unit senior affordable housing. We really need that senior affordable housing until a lot of folks are living on Social Security, and that would be government subsidized affordable housing, 45 units. I can't take the time to work with them for the financing. I can't take the time to find the land values. I can't take time to work through the planning and zoning. We have to have an advocate to make that happen.
Thank you. Logan?
Again, I think that's part of the planning department's job. If we have somebody that comes down that wants to build a 44-unit affordable senior living, why isn't the planning department bending over backwards figuring out why you can do it instead of a no? I have a problem with that. Now, if Paul Daniels would have built his project in the county, not in the city, but in the county, he would not have been exempt, even though he's helping to help this problem. He would not have been exempt. He would have had to pay it. Or he would have had to put it into a 30-year deferred use. Now, not many lenders are going to lend on a project that you can't get a return on your investment. It's just not going to happen. So, I think we've got the pieces of the puzzle in place, but we are not working to do it. If these people come in, we need to be a help at the planning department and at the commissioners. If this problem is as prevalent as it is tonight, then that's part of their job they should be doing, I feel.
I think this gets again into the need for collaboration and having this discussion before. It's great that there's going to be a housing commission who's going to work out the kinks. This is clearly a kink. Why not work them before? Why didn't we have this discussion before the ordinance passed? Why didn't we work on the rules together to present? Why didn't we do all this stuff beforehand? So yes, I think that is a kind of flies in the face of the whole idea. Again, I point to the city of Newport. They went from charging $15,000 a unit for multifamily to $4,500 a unit. They made it work. We can make it work. If you take a first step, fine. But why not take a larger first step? Why not make a first step that instead of just raising the cost immediately and then working out the details later, let's work out the details before we end up with a whole bunch of unintended consequences.
Okay, thank you. And Bill, the next one starts with you. Are we being bombarded by developers wanting to build? If yes, we do not need to incentivize builders. If no, why tax developers further discouraging them from building?
We are not being bombarded by outside folks trying to build. As much as I can tell, that would be more of a Logan question on how many outside builders are actually coming into Rosenberg's and buying supplies. this fee is so insignificant to a large builder that it doesn't make sense for them to call it as any kind of a deterrent for moving forward. Most of our development is out on the beaches now. That's where the money is. And if I was a developer, that's where I would build. And you can make a profit out there. You can't make a profit in the city of Tillamook that's worth the time or effort. The profit margin is out on the beach. We need to find a way to start equalizing that, to give some incentives to the builders to come into Tillamook and do that. The Association of Oregon Realtors and the Builders Board, Builder Association have both come out in favor of doing this. They both said it's a great idea. It's a way forward for the communities. They actually gave us a bill that we could have just passed as is to work in Tillamook County. We took the option of trying to make it better for the community. We got it shoved down our face for doing that. And that, to me, is a problem. We need to work together and make this happen. As far as the community input, we took community input.
Yeah, there are definitely builders that want to do projects in the county. A lot of them are scared to do it because they don't want to go through the process, because the process is so painful. All you need to do is ask a few people that have done it. Paul's done it. He spent the time. He's semi-retired. He has more time than a builder who's building 5 days, 6 days a week. They don't have the time to go down and play footsie with the building department. They just don't. You know, it's a hard issue. And I don't know, but if you're going to build 40, 50 units, you're going to have $3 to $5 million tied up. That's $30,000 to $50,000 in permits on this 1%. Do the math. It's brutal. Okay, now that's on top of the 1% that your building permits are already cost you. That's on top of the system development charges that in Garibaldi are $10,000 a unit. $10,000 a unit. So you've got $400,000 in permits in SDCs for a 40-unit complex.
So I just want to address what Bill said about OARs and the builders about the support of Senate Bill 1533. I don't know if anybody's ever done the legislative dance down in Salem. What happened was Speaker Kotek brought the lobbyists in the room and said, here's what's going to happen, convince me not to. And we, fortunately, the Oregon Association of Realtors had Sean Cleve, our lobbyist, in the room, and he was able, by bringing some other things to the table, to get it down to just 1%. They wanted to 5%. Get it down to 1%. Unfortunately, the home builders didn't have a lobbyist at the time, so commercial, they didn't get any limits. So always make sure you hire your lobbyists.
So since the Housing Task Force started our work, we have had a number of different nonprofit and affordable workforce housing developers contact me directly, saying, hey, what's going on down there? That sounds interesting. Tell me what you've got going on. And when I have explained where we are, they've said, well, when you guys know what you're going to do and have some capacity down there for me to work with, give me a holler. They're interested. We sat in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the senior housing developer who said, look, I just need the county to give me a handshake. And I said, so what does that mean? What's the handshake? Well, that you're going to find me the property, that the county's going to go out and do that part of it for me. They're ready, but they're expecting us to be a player. And we don't have anybody who has time to be a player. If you want your building permits to back up even further for your private development, then we can take somebody, probably Bill would have to decide, and put them into this realm. Let's make them all about affordable housing, and let's push regular housing permits back even farther. That's not going to make anybody happy. Let's acknowledge we need the capacity to do this if we're going to do it.
Okay, the next one starts with Lowton. With every policy change, there are winners and losers. Who are the winners? Who are the losers?
With this particular policy?
If this is passed.
I'd say the housing coordinator is the first winner. I'd say the big losers are the builders in the room who have to pay more for their permits. And the big losers are the people that have saved up and lived on their farm for the last 40 years and decide they're going to sell the farm to the kids and build another house on their property, and when they're told, well, you can't do that. I think they're the losers. again, I don't see the value, I don't see the enough money to do anything. When these people are contacting Aaron about, you know, what they need, they want some skin, which it means they want dollars. And this doesn't raise the kind of money that they want. You can't go in and buy off all the SDCs with this. You can't go in and buy the permits with this fee. It isn't enough. It doesn't pencil. There's other ways.
I think the $300,000 would have paid Paul Daniels' SDCs, and that's it. I think Logan just hit the nail on the head. I think was it more? Oh, good Lord. The winners, or the losers, I think, are the folks who are out there who want to go increase the housing supply. We need an increase in housing supply. So the losers are going to be the folks who are trying to do the right thing, trying to make more houses, who are trying to get out there and give people places to live. And I certainly believe that any folks who come to the county saying, could you please go find land for us? I think there's a whole bunch of us in this room with real estate licenses would be more than happy to do so.
And I have referred them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always give you your name. So winners and losers. I think we have to look at who the losers are right now, because right now our workforce is losing. And our business owners who can't find employees are losing. Our entire community is losing. Our schools are losing. Our schools hired 6 new teachers, 3 of whom never reported to work because they couldn't find housing and they quit before it started. 2 who are currently living in RVs. There are some very serious losers right now in our community that we've got to take the steps to be able to make our community a winning community.
Are we a sanctuary?
So folks who are going to be building this kind of housing, 2650, really 2,650 is going to stop you? Is it going to stop you when your child doesn't have a teacher for their classroom? Seriously, folks, this isn't just a small problem out there. This has become really large for our employers and for the folks that are trying to live here and work.
I would concur with Aaron. There'll be a lot of losers in this community if this doesn't pass. We have folks living in their cars, working full-time in our community. That's not right. We can do better in this community. We have folks that are working at the creamery that can't find housing. They're not coming into Tillamook. We can do better. We have a lot of people in this community, a large number of folks that are your neighbors, that are paying over 30% of their rent to live on. I mean, 40, 50% to live in substandard housing. We can do better than that in Tillamook. We've got to do better than that in Tillamook. If you're living in substandard housing, paying over 30% of your income for rent, you don't have food on the table for your kids. You don't have electricity and heat for your housing. You don't have a lot of the basic necessities you have to make it in this world. That's who I'm passionate for, folks, is those folks that are working in our community that don't have places to live, that are paying way too much for rent, way too much for living expenses, and can't provide a decent meal for their kids. And it's prevalent in this county.
Okay, I'm not sure this next question relates necessarily to this ordinance, but it seems to be a question that I've heard a lot, and maybe you folks like to address it. I have customers and contractors who build mid to lower price houses who will no longer work in Tillamook County because of our planning department and the costs and delays. So the question is, what plans does the county have to create a helpful and reasonable permit process?
Is it me?
Yeah, it starts with that.
I'm sure. That's a darn good question. I think Logan has talked about this quite a bit and talked about it well. I have had clients who don't want to buy land anymore. They don't want to build anymore because it's just so difficult to walk in there and be accosted. And I say, I have some friends who work in there, some really good friends who have worked in there. And I've said, I have one good friend who's gone in there to his building and said, I send my wife. I can't go anymore because I get so angry. That's not just one person. And I want to just take the last couple of seconds here. I think we're kind of talking around each other here. We're talking past each other. There's a problem. There is a problem. What we're saying is this just isn't going to fix it on its own. Yes, maybe we could say it's a first step, but it's a first step that if left alone, it's gonna make the problem worse. So I hope we can, no matter what happens, eventually.
So I can't address what the planning department will or won't do. Obviously, I could address that in the study. One of the things that was certainly talked about was creating a pathway through planning that makes things more streamlined so that you can get the things built that you need to get built. So we'll hope that that's a direction that they want to go. I think we do all want to work together, but I think we have to honor the true reality that there is not a person who can move this work forward. There isn't anybody who has the time on their plate to do this. Commissioner Bartline, if you're following his schedule at all, is completely crazy. There's not a minute left in his day. It's not like he can suddenly just clear the decks of everything else and be the leader on this project. There is no one to do that work. That's the key piece about this first step, is if we want to do the rest of this coordination, there has to be somebody whose job it is to hold this all together and bring us together and to explore the options. Everyone points at somebody else to do that work. We've got to have funding to start that piece.
Well, as a county commissioner, I can tell you that as bad as it is now, it was a heck of a lot worse when I first started. And I think both Adam and Lowton might agree that it was really bad a few years ago. Brian had made some really significant changes in there, and it was getting better. We were making progress. We seem to have slowed down a little bit on that progress, and I'll admit to that, and we're working on that internally. But this housing advocate person, that's what their role will be, with a direct reporting line to the county commissioners, so that we can sidestep the bureaucracy in planning and zoning, so that we can start working to streamline these things, so that you can come in and have this person take your hand and have a checklist. We need to do this permit done, this permit done, this permit done, take it into the planning and zoning, and say, we've got the boxes checked, approve this permit and expedite it, so that we can get something in there in 2 months' time rather than 4 or 6 or 8 or years, whatever it's taking. We need that advocate in there, that advocate for the contractors.
Yeah, I agree, the department's gotten better, the building department, and that's the building inspections, the electrical inspections, that has been great. The planning department has never moved. And I'm just gonna give you an example. If you've got a piece of farm ground where there's a house on it and you want to tear down that house and build a new farmhouse, it's about 6 weeks at least for them to come out and look at your house and just say, yep, you got a house. Even though it's on the tax rolls and you've been paying taxes on this house, then you got to get a demolition permit, and then you can't even get a building. You can't even go for a building permit until that's all been approved. Now, you can pull up Google Maps, look on it. There's a house right there. Box checked. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. This is the type of stuff we're up against. Now, an advocate, that doesn't have the power to change the planning rules down there can't fix this. The commissioners can fix this, and it hasn't happened.
Okay, Aaron, are you the one who starts next one? Okay, Aaron.
Yes, sure.
How was the $250,000 exemption arrived at?
So I wasn't in the room for that. So that was something, a $100,000 exemption was the initial, and I know that was a conversation that I believe was held with Adam and Commissioner Bartline. So I actually am gonna take a pass and let Bill talk about that.
That was a recommendation out of our public hearings. Quite frankly, we heard the concerns. We put the 10-year exemption in where it sunsets after 10 years, and we put the $250,000 into the program. The other ones that we've looked at from around the state match up pretty close to ours, but they don't do the $250,000 exemption. They tax it all if they can. We just thought that was a very good idea from the realtors, and we went with it.
Do you have an answer to that one, Adam?
Yes, when this was going on, the Board of Realtors was not particularly pleased with the idea, and this was an attempt to kind of blunt the damage, to try to at least not make it even worse on the things you were trying to make better. Initially, when it was voted on, the commissioners did not want to do that. They wanted to just do $100,000. At that point, that pretty much triggered the realtors in saying, we've got to refer this. Commissioner Yamamoto did come to me and ask, hey, well, what if we actually did do the $250,000 exemption? I said, well, I'm willing to talk to you, but I'm one vote of 68. So I took it to the board. I think any realtor on the board will say that it was a fight that I didn't necessarily want to have at that point. I wanted to have it a different way. But the Board of Realtors said that we need to move forward with this, and that's how we ended up with 250.
Thank you. So the next one starts with Bill. The housing study cost $50,000. Why does it compare Tillamook County to large cities such as Bend and Alexandria, Virginia, over and over again?
They used those as what we could do for improving the housing. This company has done housing studies across the United States. This is a nationally acclaimed firm. We wanted a firm that could come in and look at Tillamook County and tell us what happened in other communities as tourism took over, as some of the other things that happened in our community. They made some pretty stark recommendations that didn't even make the report. They said if we don't get ahead of tourism in our county, we're going to lose our county. If we don't get ahead of housing in our county, we will lose our housing in our county. We will be an area with just tourist houses in our county. So they had some specific recommendations, and the one gentleman lives in a community that started out much like Tillamook and ended up with the average price of a house at $1.5 million. Who in our community is going to be able to afford that? And that's where we're headed if we don't get ahead of these things.
Yeah, I think the company was out of Park City, Utah, or at least one of the guys that I talked to with the company was. And I'm not sure. Our county, if you looked at the map, is really split into two demographics. I mean, you've got the beach housing and you've got the inland housing. If you were to separate those two, I think you'd find that the beach housing numbers would be much higher. I think right now what we're average was $5 or five times income. It'd probably be closer to 7 and 9. But I think if you looked at the inland, it would probably be in the 3s, which is what we're shooting for. That being said, that doesn't mean there's any excess in housing. We know there's not. I don't know why they're comparing us to some of these other numbers. I mean, because of that skew, we have a higher number probably than is actual. But if you want to build in Oceanside, your SDCs are $20,000 for your sewer. And I know Pacific City is in that ballpark also. And then water on top, that's another 10. So you're 30,000 before you do anything, plus PUD, which is another 3 to 10, depending on how far you got to run. So lots of fees.
Yeah, I honestly can't speak to that very well. I don't know why they chose the city, the places that they did. But so I do want to just mention one thing that I've just kind of tweaked me a little bit is we sometimes like to beat up vacation rentals as the giant problem that we have. I don't know how many of the oceanside vacation rentals would be turned into affordable housing. If we didn't have vacation rentals, I think it would not be particularly affordable. However, I know a lot of my clients, when I sell them a house that they're using for a vacation rental, they're not doing that to get rich. They're doing it so they can pay their mortgage while they're getting ready to retire, finally retire and move down here full time. I would say of the clients that I sell vacation homes to that they use to do vacation rentals, at least 75% of them intend to move down here full time and are just using this so they can pay their mortgage. I don't like us to beat up on them as the giant boogeyman of housing because they really, really aren't.
So I think when they chose the different cities to compare to within the study, they were really looking at similar situations, things they could tie together and say, hey, it looked kind of like Tillamook when it started, here's where it is now. So they were looking at some similar pieces, but I don't know why that seemed to be such a disconnect for someone, because they're just looking to say, this is where we're headed, this is what it could look like. In terms of vacation homes, the study doesn't beat up on vacation homes. It simply points out that we have currently a trend that is shifting where we're building homes, but at a faster rate than we're building homes for full-time residents, we are losing homes to that second home and vacation market. So in and of itself, again, it is not a bad thing, but at this point in time, it is sucking housing stock away from what was full-time housing. And it is increasing values, and it is making it more difficult for us to be able to build anything that would be affordable for those who are working in our community. So it's not a bad thing in and of itself. If we can put the tools in place to backfill behind it so that our workforce can have a place to live and support that industry of second vacation homes and ultimately those seniors, great, let's do that.
Okay, this question, this card has 2 questions on it. I'm going to answer the first one, and then I'm going to start with Lowton on the second one. Aaron, are you an elected official of Tillamook County? The answer is no. Okay, so moving on to the second one. What is the difference between affordable housing and homelessness?
That's
They need more than a minute.
Well, yeah, that's, well, that's an internet. I guess if you don't have a house, you're homeless, so there you go. You know, I'm not sure I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass.
I'm glad I wasn't first. I can't say I completely understand the question. Affordable, I think affordable housing is, if you're looking in terms of low income, is someone who has living in a Section 8 housing perhaps, and maybe Aaron can speak to this a little bit better. And homelessness means, I don't think we need to define that. We don't have a house. And it certainly is a large issue in Tillamook County. I do not at all want to think, Lowton started out the right way. We are not at all against affordable housing or workforce housing. It is an issue. I think where the Commissioner and Aaron and I, or Commissioner and Aaron differ with Lowton and I, is we simply disagree with the mechanism that's being used. A lot of respect for Commissioner Bartlett and for Aaron, and I think it's important for us to have a disagreement in policy, but a agreement in the reality that this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
So affordable housing means that whatever you are making, you are spending only 30% of your income on your housing. That makes it affordable to you. So affordable housing runs the gamut, and that's what we've talked about in Tillamook County. If you are living on disability and your income is $739 a month, affordable housing for you is pretty small in terms of what you can pay. If you are an executive and you're making $150,000 a month, affordable housing is a very different picture for you. Or $150,000 a year, sorry, I want to make that up. So, obviously homelessness is an issue. Somebody said one paycheck was the difference between homelessness and affordable housing, and I can't echo that enough in this community, that there are lots of people that we have that are truly one paycheck away, and the housing that is available for them pushes them into homelessness when it shouldn't. When there should be enough money in their paycheck to pay rent, there's just nothing affordable that they can pay for.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer this one because it's a problem. Homelessness is a problem in Tillamook. We have people living under the steam donkey, if you can believe that. I looked out my window and somebody was standing at the end of the log talking, and I thought, oh, there's another crazy person. And pretty soon a head popped out from under the steam donkey there at the museum. Somebody was camped out under there. For me, the affordable part is a single mom with some kids that's living in her car, or a mom that comes in to see Aaron at care and tries to find a place to live, and there just aren't any. For me, affordable housing would be the VASH payments that our veterans get and can't find housing to use it on. You know, as a community, we can do better. We have to do better. We're on our own here, folks. This 1% tax, I hate it as much as anybody else. But quite frankly, we have to do something. We have to take that first step, and this is the first step to making the correction in our community.
Okay, the next one starts with Adam. So we've heard mostly from Adam and Lowton that there's other alternatives to this solution for this problem other than the referendum. If you had to pick one thing to start with, what one thing would you do to fix the problem?
I would, I think I would do what the city of Newport did. I would alter how we calculate our system development charges. I would make it so that instead of $10,000 per unit, and that unit can be 50,000 square feet or 50 square feet, well, it can't be 50, that's against the law, 300 square feet, calculated by your square footage. They found a way, even with the construction, they imposed a construction excise tax. But the net cost of developing went down. So I think that's would be a huge first step, is working to lower those system development charges. I can tell you, you start shopping around to builders saying, hey guys, we're cutting our system development charges in half. You want in? I don't know, Loden, probably gonna get some takers. And then it just went off, okay.
So I'm not an expert in this area, but in going around and doing the housing study, we did a lot of listening in the community and a lot of talking with folks. And system development charges are the easiest thing to swing a bat at, tell you that you should reduce those. But if you go in and look behind them and start talking about what do they pay for, so you have to remember those are not arbitrary fees that go to nothing. Those are fees that pay for services. So in Pacific City area, where it's $35,000 to hook up a home for your sewer and your water, that's a very small sewer and water district that has bills that they have to pay. They have to be able to support their system. I believe in the state of Oregon, you're not allowed to waive system development charges, and that's because it's based on a system that has to support itself. So anybody here, as a business person, you can't just give away your product. You have to get paid for it so you can pay the person that supplied you for it. It's no different with your system of development charges. It's real easy to take a swing at it and just say, well, cut those. Those are paying for services that you're getting out of it. So we have to be aware of that, think of that piece as well.
You know, the system development charges are an easy thing to kick around. But we've got to have them. As Aaron says, if you're going to have sewer and expand your sewers, you got to have them. You know, the funny part on the city of Newport is they called me for advice. They called my office and asked for the housing study and where they could get contact on the housing study and how to move forward on it. I sit on the housing subcommittee at the AOC and we talk about this. There's very few options for counties to move things forward. Our hands are pretty well tied. This 1% tax gives us an opportunity to hire the housing coordinator that can get things started. I sit on Northwest Oregon Housing Authority Board, and they're supposed to be our housing authority. They do not even hardly recognize Tillamook because they're so tied up in their area. Their capacity isn't strong enough to come here. They don't have boots on the ground in Tillamook. It's very obvious we need this person on the ground. And it's also very obvious that the only way to fund this thing is through the 1% tax. There is no other funding source.
I'd privatize the planning department in Tillamook County tomorrow.
It would go bankrupt.
I guarantee I can make money.
So this is going to be the last question that I have for them. And then I encourage you folks to have some refreshments and coffee, whatever. And possibly, as long as the panelists are willing to stay in the room, if you have specific questions for them, you can ask them. But this one is, it feels like this was ready to go after many public meetings, but now has stalled. How will the slowing of the momentum hurt or help this? Moten? Lost track. You might as well be. Yeah.
Truthfully, I don't think it's going to hurt. They've actually said in open meetings that it's going to take about 5 years for this to get off the ground before it actually produces anything useful. So for us to take a step back, bring it in front of the voters, let the voters decide if this is where they want to go, I think this is plenty of time to work this out. So we've held it up, what, a couple of months? They're saying 5 years. There you go.
I have to agree with Loden. I think holding this up is an opportunity for us to have this conversation. None of you would be here today hearing about this, chatting about this, asking tough questions if it wasn't referred to the ballot. I think it's going to make it better. I think it's an opportunity, whether it fails or passes, hopefully this has caused a level of awareness that we're all going to come to the table. We're going to all come to the table, bring our ideas, bring up the commissioners. I know the The realtors are willing to come to the table. I know this has been contentious. I know maybe our feet will get kicked underneath the table, but we're willing to come to the table. I know the builders are. I hope the commissioners are. This is an opportunity for us to say, wait a minute, and work out some of these problems and actually make it a better ordinance, whether or not it involves a CET, but make it something better. We want a first step, let's make it a better first step.
So we've been working on this for the last 2 years as a housing task force. And prior to that, we worked for 1.5 years, we're gathering information in the community to make sure that we were moving in the right direction, that housing was the most critical issue for us to look at. This has been going for a long time, and while it sounds wonderful, we'd love to have them come to the table. Where have they been? We've been working hard at it, and we are not willing to sit back and wait and wait and wait until everybody's finally ready to come and creep up with us. There is a crisis. There is one paycheck away for another homeless person. When I did my count of homeless folks, there were 106 people living under our bridges. There were 54 people, families living in cars. There is not time to slowly consider and think about whether or not we want to move forward. Yes, it will take some time to generate housing, but if we back off now and 1 year from now, we're still trying to figure out what the right solution is. That's another year those folks are going to be under the bridge and in their cars. Let's get our butts in gear.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Aaron, you're starting to become a Bart line.
Sorry.
Oh, I thought you liked her.
Good one, Adam. So for me, and I'm going to get a little personal on this. For me, it hurts when I hear it called the Bart line tax. When you think about your legacy to the community, do you want to be known as the Bill Bartline tax? Do you want to see a big signboard coming in? And I have this nightmare at night. Here's a big signboard. Welcome to Tillamook County, home of the Bartline tax.
Thanks for the idea.
Yeah.
You're welcome, folks. And you know something? I will wear that moniker proudly. I will, if we can make a difference in housing in this community. We have a major problem in this community. And if that's what it takes, by God, I'm ready to do that. I don't care what my legacy is. If we can make a difference in housing in our community, we have to stand up, folks. We can't keep letting things run us over. We have to stand up and pass this tax. And the time is now. Not next month, not next week. Now. We need to get busy and pass this tax.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round. Whole stack of questions that I was unable to ask, but I appreciate you all sitting here for almost 2 hours to listen. So I hope you've learned a lot and you know it'll help your vote.
So let's not wait until it passes or doesn't pass. When are we meeting? Where are we meeting?
Name the date.
When he's willing to come to the table, let's do it.
Name the date, name the date, time.
What do you do?